The Harrington Conservatory gleamed like a cathedral of glass and steel against the autumn sky. Elena Chen tightened her grip on the worn violin case and drew a deep breath. 10 years had passed since she'd last performed, 10 years since she'd abandoned her prodigy status and disappeared from the music world entirely. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. Her practical black flats clicked against marble as she entered the grand foyer. All around her, people moved with purpose and confidence. Students with instrument cases strapped to their backs, professors in tailored blazers discussing theory, donors in expensive jewelry examining the plaques that bore their names. Elena felt painfully out of place in her simple button-down shirt and slacks from the department store. At 32, she was older than most students and lacked the imperious bearing of the instructors. Her resume, once brilliant with promise, now showed a decade-long gap that she'd filled with a string of office jobs. "Can I help you?" The receptionist's voice cut through her thoughts. "I have an appointment with Dean Blackwell. I'm Elena Chen." The woman's eyes flicked over her, clearly unimpressed. "Take a seat. He's running late." Elena sat in a stiff leather chair, violin case, balanced on her knees. The case was scratched and worn, but what lay inside remained perfect. A Guarneri del Gesù from 1742, a family heirloom worth more than most houses. No one would guess by looking at her that she owned such a treasure. Through the glass walls of the nearby practice rooms, she watched students working through difficult passages, their faces contorted with concentration, bodies swaying with the music. She'd once been like them, driven, passionate, consumed by perfection. Dean Nathaniel. Blackwell swept into the lobby precisely 45 minutes late. He was tall and impeccably dressed, his silver hair artfully styled. "Ms. Chen, so sorry to keep you waiting." His handshake was firm but brief. "Let's talk in my office." His office was a testament to success. Awards lined the walls. Photographs showed him with celebrities and world leaders. Elena sat across from him, feeling increasingly small. "So," he said, glancing at her resume, "you're interested in our teaching assistant position?" "Yes, I remember a prodigy named Chen some years back," he interrupted. "Vanished right before the international Tchaikovsky competition, made quite a stir. Any relation?" Elena's mouth went dry. "That was me, actually." His eyebrows rose slightly, the only indication of surprise. "Well, that's interesting. What happened?" "Family circumstances," she said quietly. "My father became ill suddenly. I had to return home to care for him. For 10 years. His tone made it clear he thought she was wasting his time. "He died last year," Elena said. "I've been working administrative jobs to pay bills, but music has always been my passion." "Passion doesn't maintain technique, Ms. Chen." He set her resume down. "Our TAs are expected to perform regularly. They represent Harrington." "I understand. I've been practicing consistently for the past year." Blackwell looked skeptical. "We have a faculty recital this evening. Perhaps you'd like to attend, get a feel for our standards." The dismissal in his voice was unmistakable. Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks. "Actually, I'd like to audition." "Properly," she said, "if you have time." "Not today, I'm afraid. Too many appointments." He rose, already looking past her. "Amanda can schedule something next month, perhaps." Elena stood, clutching her case. "Thank you for your time." As she turned to leave, a tall woman with auburn hair styled in an elegant updo walked in without knocking. "Nathaniel, about tonight's program." She stopped, eyes landing on Elena. "Oh, sorry, didn't realize you were still in meetings." "No trouble, Vivian," Blackwell said warmly. "Just finishing up." Ms. Chen was inquiring about a teaching position. The woman, Vivian, assessed Elena with sharp blue eyes. "I don't believe we've met. Vivian Harrington." Elena recognized the name immediately. The conservatory's founder's granddaughter and current chair of strings. "Elena Chen," she replied, extending her hand. "Chen?" Vivian's perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together. "Not the same Chen who disappeared before the Tchaikovsky?" Elena nodded reluctantly. "Well," Vivian's mouth formed a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How unexpected. What brings you back now?" I'm looking to teach, Eleanor said simply, avoiding the personal details. With no performance record for a decade. Vivian's laugh was light but cutting. That's ambitious. Blackwell cleared his throat. I suggested she attend tonight's recital, get a feel for our standards. Excellent idea, Vivian agreed. You should definitely come. I'm performing the Sibelius Violin Concerto. It might inspire you to reconsider your timing. Elena recognized the challenge but refused to rise to it. I look forward to it. As she left the office, she heard Vivian's voice. Drift after her. Can you imagine 10 years away and expects to walk right in? Elena's cheeks burned as she hurried across the lobby. The recital hall buzzed with conversation when Elena arrived that evening. She'd taken extra care with her appearance, wearing her one good dress, a simple black sheath that she hoped looked professional enough. Her hair was pinned back neatly, and she wore the pearl earrings her father had given her for her 18th birthday. She found a seat in the back row, trying to be invisible. Students and faculty members greeted each other warmly, their laughter echoing in the high-ceilinged space. No one spoke to her. The lights dimmed and Dean Blackwell walked onto the stage to polite applause. "Welcome to our fall faculty showcase," he announced. "We have a wonderful program for you tonight, featuring some of our most distinguished professors. The first performer was a cellist who played Bach with technical precision, if little emotion. Next came a pianist whose Debussy rippled like water." Elena watched intently, analyzing their technique, noting both strengths and weaknesses. During intermission, she remained in her seat while others filed into the lobby for refreshments. A young man with a violin case sat down beside her. "You're not faculty or a student," he said matter-of-factly. "I know everyone here." Elena smiled slightly. "Just visiting. I'm Elena." Marcus Taylor, first-year graduate student. He studied her curiously. "Are you a performer?" "I was once." "Cool." "What?" Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp voice. "Marcus, there you are." Vivian Harrington approached, resplendent in a crimson gown. Her gaze slid over Elena dismissively. "I need you backstage to turn pages for Professor Levine," she instructed Marcus. "Oh, and be sure your preparation for tomorrow's masterclass is thorough. We have important donors attending." "Yes, Professor." "Harrington." As Marcus hurried away, Vivian turned to Eleanor. "Enjoying the performances?" "Very much," Elena replied politely. "The pianist was exceptional." "Professor Kim is world-renowned," Vivian said. "Everyone here is at the pinnacle of their careers. That's what makes Harrington special. We don't accept mediocrity." The barb was clear. "I've always believed that time away from performance can deepen one's understanding of music," Eleanor said carefully. Vivian's laugh was like ice cracking. "That's a convenient philosophy for someone who gave up." She leaned closer. "You know, I was at the preliminaries. For the Tchaikovsky, the year you were supposed to compete. Such a shame, everyone said you were favored to win." Before Elena could respond, the lights flickered, signaling the end of intermission. "Enjoy the second half," Vivian said with a cold smile. "Perhaps it will remind you what real dedication looks like." When Vivian took the stage for the Sibelius, Elena had to admit she was technically flawless. Every note was precisely where it should be, her bow control immaculate. But there was something missing, a soul, a vulnerability, a willingness to risk imperfection for the sake of emotional truth. After the performance, Elena slipped out quickly, avoiding further conversation. Outside, the night air was cool against her flushed skin. She walked to the bus stop, violin case in hand, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake in coming back. The next morning, Eleanor returned to the conservatory with renewed determination. If she couldn't secure a position through traditional channels, perhaps she could at least use the practice facilities. Many conservatories allowed community musicians to rent rooms by the hour. The receptionist from the previous day looked up with recognition. "Ms. Chen, did you need something else?" "I was wondering about practice room rentals." "For students and faculty only, I'm afraid." Elena's shoulders slumped. "Is there any way I could—" "Elena? Is that you?" She turned to find Professor Samuel Abrams, his kind face exactly as she remembered it. He'd been her theory teacher during the summer program she'd attended at 17. Professor Abrams. For the first time since arriving, Eleanor felt a genuine smile spread across her face. My goodness, what a surprise. He embraced her warmly. It's been, what, 15 years? Close to it, she confirmed. Are you joining our faculty? Why wasn't I told? I'm trying to, she admitted. I had an interview with Dean Blackwell yesterday, but understanding crossed his face. Ah, I see. Well, you're here now. Are you playing again? Elena nodded. Yes, though not professionally. Not yet. Wonderful. His enthusiasm was contagious. You know, I'm teaching a masterclass today. One of my students cancelled, some sort of emergency. Would you consider filling in just to demonstrate a few passages? Eleanor hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea. Dean Blackwell and Professor Harrington have made it clear that nonsense. Abrams waved dismissively. My class, my guest, room 305 at 11. Nothing fancy, just the first movement of the Mendelssohn Concerto. Everyone knows that one. Before she could protest further, he was gone, leaving Eleanor standing in the lobby with her heart pounding. The Mendelssohn had been one of her signature pieces as a young performer. She could play it in her sleep. But did she dare? At 10:55, Eleanor found herself outside room 305, wavering between courage and retreat. Through the door, she could hear students tuning their instruments. Taking a deep breath, she knocked and entered. Professor Abrams beamed at her. Ah, perfect timing. Everyone please welcome Elena Chen, a former student of mine and a brilliant violinist. The dozen students murmured polite hellos. Elena nodded, scanning the room, and froze when she saw Vivian Harrington and Dean Blackwell sitting in the back corner. Blackwell's expression was mildly curious, Vivian's was openly hostile. I was just telling the students about interpretation versus technical precision, Abrams continued, oblivious to Elena's discomfort. Ms. Chen, would you mind demonstrating the opening of the Mendelssohn? Just the first theme, with trembling. Fingers, Elena opened her case. Several students gasped when they saw the Guarneri. Is that genuine? Asked a wide-eyed girl in the front row. Elena nodded. Family heirloom. A fine instrument wasted on someone who doesn't use it, Vivian remarked loudly. Like a Ferrari gathering dust in a garage. The room fell silent. Eleanor's face burned as she lifted the violin to her chin. Whenever you're ready, Abrams said gently. Elena closed her eyes briefly, then began to play. The first few notes were tentative, her fingers remembering the patterns, but her confidence lagging. She stumbled slightly on a shift, wincing internally. Perhaps we should have started with something simpler, Vivian suggested, not bothering to lower her voice. The Suzuki Book 1, perhaps. Laughter rippled through the room. Elena stopped playing, lowering her instrument. The humiliation was complete. She'd proven Vivian right in front of everyone. I apologize, she said softly to Abrams. It's been a while. No need to apologize, he assured her, though his disappointment was visible. Everyone has off days. Or off decades, Vivian added, rising from her seat. Dean Blackwell and I have another appointment, but this has been enlightening. As they left, Eleanor carefully placed her violin back in its case, avoiding the pitying glances of the students. Thank you for coming, Elena, Abrams said quietly. Perhaps another time. She nodded, too humiliated to speak, and slipped out of the room. Elena spent the afternoon at a coffee shop near the conservatory, alternating between self-recrimination and anger. How could she have allowed herself to be so thoroughly humiliated? What had she expected? That her talent would simply reappear after a decade of neglect? The truth was, she hadn't neglected it entirely. Even during her father's illness, she'd played when she could, late at night or early in the morning, keeping her fingers nimble and her ear sharp. What she lacked wasn't skill, but confidence. And now, after 3 separate humiliations, her confidence was at an all-time low. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, the student she'd met at the recital. How he'd gotten her number, she couldn't. Imagine. Heard what happened in Abrams' class. Harrington's a snake, don't let her win. Elena smiled despite herself. At least someone was on her side. Another text followed. Donor showcase tonight, all faculty performing. H playing Paganini Caprice 24. Final selection slot still open. Someone cancelled. Your chance. Elena stared at the message in disbelief. Was he suggesting she perform at the donor showcase after what had happened in the masterclass? Impossible, she texted back. No invitation. Abrams can arrange it. Says he believes in you. Her heart raced. Could she really do this? Put herself out there again, risk another public failure. What would I even play, she asked. Something that shows what you can really do. Something no one else will attempt. Elena thought for a long moment. There was one piece, a piece she'd been working on privately for years, even during her hiatus. A piece so fiendishly difficult that few violinists ever mastered it. I'll think about it, she replied. She spent the next 4 hours in a nearby church that let musicians practice in their basement for a small donation. There, Elena played through her piece again and again, working through the technical challenges, refining her interpretation. By the time she emerged, dusk had fallen, and she had made her decision. The donor showcase was held in the conservatory's grand hall, a space usually reserved for visiting orchestras and world-famous soloists. As Elena slipped in through a side door, she saw that the audience consisted of older, well-dressed individuals whose combined net worth could probably fund a small nation. Backstage, she found Marcus waiting anxiously. You came, he whispered. Abrams is looking for you. You're on last, right after Harrington. Is that wise? Elena asked, suddenly doubting the plan. It's perfect. She'll never expect it. Professor Abrams appeared, clutching a program. Elena, I'm so glad you decided to come. I've added you to the program, hope that's all right. What did you list as my piece, she asked. I left it as selection to be announced. Was that okay? Perfect, she assured him. And thank you for believing in me. He squeezed her shoulder. I never forgot what you were capable of, even if you did for a while. The showcase began with a string quartet, followed by several solo performances. Elena remained hidden in the wings, stretching her fingers and mentally rehearsing passages. When Vivian took the stage to enthusiastic applause, Elena forced herself to watch. The Paganini Caprice was a showpiece, a technical challenge designed to display virtuosity. Vivian played it perfectly, her fingers flying across the strings, her bow control masterful. The audience responded with a standing ovation. As Vivian took her bows, Dean Blackwell stepped forward. Thank you, Professor Harrington, for that spectacular performance. He consulted his program with a slight frown. It seems we have one final performer tonight, a last-minute addition. Elena Chen will play a selection to be announced. Vivian froze mid-curtsy, her head snapping up in shock. Elena stepped onto the stage, violin in hand, and nodded politely to Blackwell. Thank you, Dean. I'll be performing the Icai Sonata No. 6. A murmur ran through the audience. The Icai Sonatas were among the most difficult works in the solo violin repertoire, and the 6th was particularly challenging with its dissonant harmonies and complex rhythms. It was rarely performed even by established virtuosos. Vivian's face tightened as she took a seat in the front row, clearly expecting disaster. Blackwell looked worried. Elena stood center stage, took a deep breath and lifted her violin. The first notes exploded from the instrument like gunshots, sharp, aggressive, demanding attention. The sonata began with a theme built on rapid fire, double stops and string crossings, requiring absolute precision and fearless commitment. Unlike her tentative performance in the masterclass, this time Elena played with conviction. Her fingers found each note with unerring accuracy, her bow digging into the strings to produce a sound that filled every corner of the hall. The piece moved through moods like weather, from stormy fury to delicate whispered passages that required the audience to lean forward to hear. Elena swayed with the music, lost in its complexity, her face reflecting each emotional shift. In the technically demanding middle section, she executed a series of left-hand pizzicatos that made several professional musicians in the audience exchange glances of disbelief. Her articulation was crystal clear, each note distinct yet connected to the whole. As she approached the finale, a blistering series of arpeggios and harmonics that spiraled higher and higher, Elena closed her eyes, surrendering completely to the music. The final notes hung in the air like stars, bright and impossible. For several seconds after she finished, the hall remained silent. Then, from the back, someone began to applaud. It was Professor Abrams. Others joined in, then more, until the entire audience was on its feet, the applause thunderous. Elena opened her eyes, momentarily disoriented. She'd forgotten where she was, forgotten the audience entirely. She'd been playing for herself, for the pure joy of making music again. Dean Blackwell's face showed stunned amazement. Several donors were wiping tears from their eyes. And Vivian sat rigid in her chair, her face pale, hands clenched in her lap. As Elena took her bow, she caught Marcus's eye off stage. He was grinning and giving her a thumbs up. Beyond him, she spotted a figure she hadn't expected, Yuri Petrenko, the renowned conductor of the National Symphony Orchestra. Petrenko was leaning forward in his seat, a look of intense interest on his face. After the applause finally died down, Elena found herself surrounded backstage by donors, faculty members, and students, all wanting to speak with her. She answered questions politely, still in a daze from the performance. Where have you been all these years? Are you joining the faculty? Would you consider teaching master classes? My grandson studies violin. Would you take private students? Dean Blackwell pushed through the crowd, his hand extended. Ms. Chen, Elena, that was extraordinary. I've never heard the USA played with such emotion. We should talk about that teaching position again. Perhaps something more substantial than a TA role. Thank you, Elena managed, still overwhelmed by the response. As the crowd thinned, she found herself face to face with Vivian. The woman's composure had returned, but her eyes were cold. Impressive comeback, she said stiffly. Though I question your choice of piece, Isaye requires maturity that comes from consistent performance experience. I disagree, Elena replied, calmly. It requires emotional understanding that comes from life experience. Music isn't just about perfect technique, it's about having something to say. Vivian's cheeks flushed. Well, I hope you enjoy your moment. One good performance doesn't erase a decade of silence. She turned to leave, but came face to face with Yuri Petrenko, Ms. Harrington. He acknowledged with a nod before turning his attention to Elena. Ms. Chen, I've been following your career, or rather waiting for your return since your early competition days. You were extraordinary then. You're transcendent now. Vivian's face went from flushed to ashen. You know each other? She asked faintly. Not personally, Petrenko said, but I never forget a true artist. Ms. Chen, we have a soloist cancellation for next month's program, Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto. Any interest in making your professional comeback with us? Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Yes, I would be honored. Excellent. He handed her his card. My assistant will be in touch with details. And Professor Harrington, he turned back to Vivian, your Paganini was technically flawless. Keep working on the emotional depth. With that parting shot, he melted back into the crowd, leaving Vivian speechless for perhaps the first time in her career. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in her dressing room at Carnegie Hall, preparing for her third performance as a soloist with the National Symphony. Her debut with the Tchaikovsky had earned standing ovations and glowing reviews. Critics had called her a phoenix risen from the ashes and the most emotionally compelling violinist of her generation. A knock at the door interrupted her preparations. 5 minutes, Ms. Chen, the stage manager called. Thank you, she replied, adjusting the midnight blue gown she'd selected for tonight's performance. So much had changed since that day at Harrington Conservatory. She'd declined Dean Blackwell's offer of a teaching position, though she did agree to give occasional master classes scheduled around her performance commitments. Her calendar was now filled with concert dates through the next 2 years. Professor Abrams had become a trusted advisor and friend. Marcus was flourishing under her occasional mentorship, and Vivian had recently announced she was taking a sabbatical to refocus on her artistic development. Another knock, and Professor Abrams poked his head in. Ready to conquer the world again? Elena smiled. Ready as I'll ever be. I brought someone who wanted to wish you luck. He opened the door wider to reveal a young girl, perhaps 12, clutching a violin case. "This is Maylene," Abrams explained. "She's my most promising student, and she's quite nervous about her recital next week. I thought meeting you might inspire her." Elena knelt down to the girl's eye level. "Hello, Maylene. It's nice to meet you. I saw your Tchaikovsky performance. Online," the girl said shyly. "It made me cry in a good way." "That's the highest compliment a musician can receive," Elena told her. "And you know what? I still get nervous before performances too." "You do?" The girl's eyes widened. "But you're Helena Chen," Elena laughed. "Yes, and even Elena Chen gets butterflies. The secret is to remember why you play. Not for the applause or the reviews, but for the love of the music itself." "Ms. Chen, 2 minutes," the stage manager called again. "I have to go," Elena told Maylin. "But remember, play from your heart. That's where the real music lives." As she walked toward the stage, violin in hand, Elena thought about the journey that had brought her here. The years caring for her father, the office jobs, the humiliations at Harrington, the triumphant return. Each experience had shaped her. Playing given her music a depth and humanity it might never have had otherwise. The stage lights were bright as she walked out to thunderous applause. The conductor, not Petrenko tonight, but the equally respected Maria Gonzalez, smiled warmly as Elena took her position. As the orchestra began the introduction to the Brahms Violin Concerto, Elena closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. When she lifted her bow for the first entrance, she played not just with her hands, but with her entire being, her struggles, her triumphs, her humanity. In the end, that's what separated a technician from an artist. Not the ability to hit every note perfectly, but the courage to reveal one's soul through music. To be vulnerable, to be real. That was the gift her years away from the spotlight had given her, a gift no competition or conservatory could ever provide. And as the music soared around her, Elena knew she wouldn't trade that journey for anything in the world. Life's greatest lessons often come disguised as failures, setbacks, and unexpected detours. The path to discovering your true voice rarely follows a straight line. What matters isn't the time spent away from your calling, but the courage it takes to return, and the wisdom you bring back when you do.